Here's your neighborhood moment, a chance to find out about events, activities, and what's happening in your area.
Hi, I'm Kyle Price. I'm the chair of the North End Neighborhood Council, and welcome again to our version of Neighborhood Moment. Just a quick reminder before I get into our real conversation today. The North End, if you're not familiar with the area, it's bounded essentially by the water to the north, by Orchard on the west, 6th Avenue, and then it wraps around the North Slope Historic District and goes along 5th Street all the way up to the water again on the east. If you want to find out more or be more engaged with the neighborhood, you can follow us on Facebook. We have a large presence there. And if you also want to find out more, you could check out our website where you could sign up to be on our mailing list. Our website is www.nenc.org. Okay, one of the conversations that we hear a lot at our meetings and also just around the North End, they tend to revolve around a couple different issues, and those are development and design. So with me today to talk about those two issues, I have Pat Beard, who is a project manager with the Community and Economic Development Department with the City of Tacoma. And I have Don Erikson, who's the former chair of the Planning Commission and is the current president of Historic Tacoma. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show. Pat, I'm going to start with you. And maybe, first of all, you could just explain where most of the development is actually taking place in Tacoma.
So the types of development, of course, kind of dictate where they happen. Of course, in the Tide Flats and Alley Valley area, we're seeing nice industrial projects coming in, creating jobs. We have retail redevelopment going on at Tacoma Mall. But for housing and multifamily housing, primarily that's taking place in the mixed-use districts where developers are able to use our city multifamily property tax exemption and where the zoning in those areas calls for higher density housing. So in the North End specifically, most of the zoning is for single-family homes. So we're not seeing this plethora of dense housing projects coming in. The only mixed-use area in North End is Proctor, and that's where, of course, we're seeing the multifamily projects coming in, just a couple of them.
Like Proctor Station and Madison 25.
Yes.
Are there other projects in the North End that are maybe a little smaller that just aren't as large in size, but what kinds of projects happen more often in the North End?
So in the North End, primarily we're seeing renovations and additions to single-family homes, some improvements of small professional offices like law offices, dental offices, and that kind of thing. Now, outside, just a little bit outside of the North End, you are seeing some development at Westgate, obviously at Point Ruston, but in the North End proper, it's pretty much limited to additions and renovations.
Got it. And people do sometimes want to find out about development that's taking place in either their neighborhood or even sometimes when they drive by it in other places around the city of Tacoma. And so I understand the city has developed some tools to help people stay abreast of that kind of information. Yeah.
Yes, we have. There's really some great information that we can all use to look up things for ourselves. We're not dependent anymore on calling and hoping we get the friendly person at the phone. So we have a website which has apps on it that you can use from your phone or your computer, and it's called Tacoma Permits. So if you want to look up and find out what's going on anywhere in the city or in the North End, you can go to a website called tacomapermits.org/maps. And this on the screen now.
Yeah, we have it on the graphics right here. You can.
Yes, it's showing the homepage of tacomapermits.org, and you see its interactive maps. And then if we go to the next image, it's going to show you there's a choice of maps that you can choose. One is land use notices. There's building permits also that you can look up. But we're going to just quickly run through a land use notice for the North End right now. So this is what the map will look like when you click on it, and the yellow dots are where land use actions are being considered. So we're going to hone in on one that's showing it's in a public comment period right now, and that is the Cordillo School. So if you click on the yellow dot, you're going to see what exactly is the land use activity that's going on and what is the proposed use. So this same thing works for building permits.
Right.
If you select the building permit map, then you're going to see another screen, but in this case, the dots are going to be green, not yellow. And here's that map.
Right.
And so you can do the same thing. You can hone in on any one of these dots. You can obviously go closer in, so you're getting less detail. But for example, we just picked a project right here, and it's going to show you that there's multiple permits under this green dot. And in fact, that's why the dot is bigger. And so if you notice, I circled up at the top, there's the little arrow that goes to the right. If you want to see all of the permits, you just click that arrow and it'll click through all the permits. So this is a small multifamily project actually going in the North End on North 31st Street. And I got
down in Old Town there, it looks like.
Yep. And so I got us a look at that project, which I think we have an image of. So there's the project. Now this type of permit record still is not available on the web, but if you ever did want to see any project, you can request that from the city and we can send that to you. So that shows that this is a 4-apartment project going in on North 31st.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to, so that hopefully that's useful information for our neighbors to use and follow along a little bit. The other comment, I'm going to switch to you here, Don. One of the things that people ask about is design and design review in particular. And the city, I know, is looking at how they can build a system of design review. And maybe, though, just so people understand, can you just give a brief description of what design review actually is?
Sure. Typically, people think of design review as a municipal function, something done by cities, landmarks commissions, design commissions, etc., set up to review private projects. But keep in mind it's also something that's used in the private sector. Shopping malls, industrial parks, high-end subdivisions typically all have some form of design review associated with them.
And there's some design review already in the city of Tacoma in certain places. Can you just give a couple quick examples of those that are already out there?
Yeah, the city has 8 historical districts currently administered through the city's Landmark Preservation Commission. And they all have various guidelines. Some of them use national standards. Some are local standards. Some look at demolitions of primarily new construction, such as the Wedge District. And Old Town, for example, looks at more than that, looks at anything that basically requires a building permit.
And what are the impacts of those areas that do have design review? Is the impacts generally positive for those areas, and why is that?
I think generally speaking, if you think of design review, it really enhances the livability and the quality of the areas that are affected. Typically property values are higher in these areas because they're protected from speculative development that may just come in and not have anything to do with the character of the area. So it really, if you look at property values, they usually are maintained at a higher level than areas, everything else being the same. So it's a positive thing. There are some associated costs, obviously, with that.
Right. I assume, though, that even with the cost, because the property values are maintained at a higher level, the longer-term benefit, even for people who are building in those areas or people who are living in those areas, tends to be a positive thing.
It is a positive thing, yeah. And most of the people who live in those areas support the districts.
Right. And so with that, if a design review were applied more generally around the city, do you feel like that would apply more generally, or do you think it's just something that's a niche piece in different pieces?
I think you want to be selective. Having worked in design review most of my career, often it's commercial business districts that will have extensive design guidelines. Historic districts are another example. Seattle has had a design commission for 50 years that looks at capital improvement projects, fire stations, police stations, libraries, street improvement projects of that sort. So it's not a new concept. I think applying it to major projects, typically there's a scale function. So in our mixed-use centers where we have higher densities, it's something that I think is almost mandatory. You need that to assure people that you're really getting the environment that you want. You can have the density, don't worry about the density. If it's done right, it's going to be very livable in terms of the community.
As long as it's designed right.
It was designed right.
Right. Certainly, the North End Neighborhood Council supports the design review process that the city is working through currently now. They're just in the beginning stages, I know. But thank you, Don, for explaining that. Circling back to you, is there anything that when you hear design review and the development side of things, is that something that sounds workable or makes sense to you because of what you see with some of the designs that you're seeing out there, or some of the kind of permitting that you see?
I think that it can help communities have more ability to ensure the character of development that goes into their areas. Some of the weaknesses of design review can sometimes be that it's uncertain, sometimes based on personal tastes. And those are things to kind of guide, kind of watch out for, so that you still have a predictable development path, but you're preserving the character that you want for your neighborhood.
Hopefully, ultimately in Tacoma, we'll develop a system that has a lot of certainty and keeps development and keeps our city moving in a positive direction that also maintains some good character for neighborhoods like the North End. Thank you. That's all we have time for. Thank you both for joining me here today on the Neighborhood Moment. Again, I'm Kyle Price, and if you want to follow more and find out more about the North End, or find out more about the topics that were covered today, again, you can follow us on Facebook, or also check us out at www.nenc.org. We'll see you around the neighborhood.
For more information on what's going on in your neighborhood, log on to the city's website, cityoftacoma.org/neighborhood councils.